This is California. This is where everybody comes all the way around the world to enjoy the beaches, the sunset, the warm weather year round, the innovation, the excitement. Well, politicians have pushed everybody out. Those moving vans are still making a mass exodus, taking our brain drain with it. So again, this is California. For decades, it has been one of the most powerful economic engines in the world. If it were its own country, it would rank among the largest economies globally. In fact, it has been the center of innovation, the birthplace of Silicon Valley, and a magnet for talent from every corner of the world. People didn't just come here for jobs, they came here to build something meaningful, to create, to take risks, and to be a part of what actually felt like the future. But over the past years, something has shifted, not overnight, though. In fact, it started decades ago, and not in a single moment in those decades. It has built quietly, eroding the foundation of the state. And then, all at once, the water rushed under the foundations and swept away what was left. So as we look at California, there are so many amazing things that have happened here. But according to David Friedberg of the All In podcast's fame, of course, he's a tech billionaire, there is a growing concern among founders, investors, and operators that the environment in California has become increasingly difficult to navigate. It's not one issue in isolation, as you can name a whole list yourself, but a combination of policy, cost, and cultural dynamics that together are changing how people make decisions about where to build and where to stay, and where to start companies, launch innovation, and it ain't California anymore. This isn't a story of sudden change and collapse. It's really a story about pressure that over the time is forcing people out. Remember, HP started in a garage? And all the infrastructure that we built in California continues to grow. And yet, what is different? California's rise wasn't accidental. Institutions like Stanford University played a major role in feeding talent into the ecosystem. Venture capital clustered in a way that made funding more accessible than anywhere else in the world. And there was a culture that encouraged experimentation, even failure. Fail fast and fail hard. Just try and risk something new as part of the process and pattern to success. There was also something simpler, but no less important. Quality of life was amazing in California. The climate, the geography, and the lifestyle made it easier to obtain the intensity required to build companies from nothing to global phenomenons, unicorns even. Long hours felt more manageable when the environment supported it. For a long time, California wasn't just the best option, it was the default. And then came COVID. This was a turning point, an awareness. It became too dangerous to go to the beach, but you could park across the freeway and run across in front of the fast traffic, but you couldn't just park in the parking lots or walk onto the sand because that would be too dangerous to be next to the ocean, which is cleansing, but you would catch COVID from it. The bike lanes, that's a whole nother mess. We had 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. Now we've got one in each direction, even on crazy roads. California is now closed for business. It wasn't just shut down for the brief 2 to 3 weeks to slow the curve. It hasn't reopened. And as I maintain continuously, telework is a scam. It has people in their homes doing other things and not focusing on the business, the innovation, and the capitalism needed to pull up our britches and run forward with the innovation and technology that is allowed in California. So then came, let's see if we can go back to this. Then came unions and compliance. Over the past decade, a number of policy decisions have changed the operating landscape. One of the most widely discussed was AB 5, which reclassified independent contractors and employees. Now, as you might recall, the goal of this was to curtail the manipulative labor environment for Uber and secondary Lyft companies, to have people invest in their own vehicles, use their own gas, their own insurance in order to drive for these massive tech conglomerates that were designated as unicorns. However, as we saw this move forward, they seemed to get out of it. And individuals like you and I could no longer be independent contractors. We had to either work for an employer or get out of the state. While the intention was to provide worker protections, it, like all the other policies in California, reduced flexibility for startups that rely on contract-based talent in their early stages. At the same time, California's tax structure remains among the highest in the country, particularly for top earners. For founders approaching liquidity events, that means a significant consideration. Housing costs have also continued to rise, driven in part by supply constraints and zoning limitations, making it increasingly expensive to attract and retain talent. None of these policies exist in an isolation or a vacuum. Each one introduces the layer of complexity, and together they begin to shape how decisions are made at the margin. So as companies try to rein in and follow the weird policies, compliance and regulations force people out. It's a swift kick in the butt. Lights are off. There's no business here anymore. If you step back and look at the data, a pattern begins to emerge. Data is really important, and the analysis of that data teaches us a lot about history and predicting the future. California has experienced a net out migration in many recent years, meaning more residents are leaving for other states than moving in from other states. At the same time, a number of high-profile companies have either relocated their headquarters or expanded significantly outside of the state, taking jobs and taxes with them. Companies like Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard have all shifted major operations to states like Texas, Texas 1. However, it's important to maintain perspective. California still leads in venture capital investment and remains a dominant force in sectors like artificial intelligence and advanced technology. What we're seeing is not collapse, it's a redistribution of activity, if you ask AI. So we had the beaches closed. And let me go ahead and read here too. The COVID-19 pandemic marked the turning point in regions in Santa Clara County, where I live. Restrictions were among the strictest in the country. You know, at one point, they put fences around the gas stations so we couldn't even leave. Offices closed, businesses paused operation, and remote work became the norm almost overnight. For companies, this proves something that had previously been theoretical. Location was no longer a fixed requirement. Teams could operate from anywhere, and productivity could be maintained outside of traditional hubs. Once that realization took hold, it fundamentally changed the equation. Perception versus policy. There has also been ongoing discussion that potential tax changes, including proposals targeting high-worth individuals, why not all these proposals have been enacted into law, their existence shapes perception. As an example, the proposed 5% one-time wealth on billionaires is driving out billionaires and headquarters. Why? Because it goes into play January of 2026. And no, it hasn't been voted on. Once they vote on it and get it passed or get it signed by executive order, it will be retroactive. So if your butt didn't leave California and you're in a billionaire status by January of 2026, which already passed, clean out your wallets. Well, a lot have left. So now that 5% tax looks like it's going to come out of your savings account. And perceptions matter. Business decisions are often made based on an anticipated future condition, not just current ones. If founders believe the costs or constraints will increase, they're more likely to choose to relocate before the changes take effect. This is less about ideology and more about risk management. Now, as I mentioned, I haven't seen the formal documents. It's only been reported in the news. But Valero Gas, as an example, paid over $1 billion just to leave California. We need the manufacturing in this country. We need gas options in this country, and we need tech headquarters in this country. And congratulations, they've all been forced out. This image right here shows HNW wealth concentration, 27% of total assets in 2010 and 44% in 2022. Now, what does this even mean? I don't know. And AI decided to put this in there, and I left it just to go ahead and laugh about it. So as we move forward, systems and incentives, systems matter, policies matter. The people who put in those policies and systems make a difference. Now, as I will discuss in the other video today related to Eric Swalwell and the California governor's race, Tony Thurmond is coming in with 0% dead last, way below the Republicans and last among the Democrats. He screwed over California education system as the highest official over schools in California. And as a minority, he refused to even meet with minority students. He allowed mass corruption and DEI to manipulate and rip apart the system while he allowed inappropriate material and refused to lock down student laptops rather than just educating the students. Let's just leave it at that on that one. But he's dead last. At least there's some kind of honesty there. This is a tendency to frame this conversation in ideological terms, often use labels like capitalism, socialism. But AI wants you to know that in reality, California operates with a mixed economic system, combining private enterprise with regulatory oversight and social programs. So if we take AI's word for it, AI didn't give us the percentage of each. You could go to the grocery store today and find out which one ran successful. If you want to deem it that, anybody with an EBT card, which is almost everybody in front of you at line, fills their cart with food because they have this disposable income to spend by the end of the month. Anybody who has a job or a limited income based on hard work will try their best to get all their groceries into one grocery bag, which is now a minimum of $60 worth of food. The social programs have taken over, and they've robbed us blind. The more practical question about incentives is, where do builders feel that they can move quickly to take risks and be rewarded for those risks, mounting to success? And yet, where do they feel constrained? Those perceptions, whether fully accurate or not, influence behavior at scale and have taken mass population out of the United States and driven those who build businesses and company headquarters out of the state. Now, on a personal note, I had a wonderful time, and I'll talk about this on the Artemis video. I drove down to San Diego in order to listen to the sonic boom and the Artemis coming back down to Earth, landing offshore from San Diego. Like you, if you did, I watched it on the internet because it was too far out there to be able to see. I gave it a go, but it was very interesting. I was sitting at dinner at a place similar to this, except for it was over the ocean and there's a fireplace inside of a fire pit. And I was enjoying dinner with two friends that I worked with almost 30 years ago. And we were talking about what's going on at this point. You know, it's interesting. There were three of us at the table at this beautiful location in California, which is why we're all here. The sun was setting, the fireplace was going, and I started to talk about the activities I've been working on, not only deep into AI and the push we're doing with the blockchain, but also my side work in helping the 82-year-old woman who somebody filed an affidavit of debt stating that she died, took her home, and then arrested her for trespassing. But you know what's interesting? There were only three of us at that table. One of the others spoke up as well. That happened to her in the same year, similar tactics. She lost her car, all the contents in her storage on the property, the contents in the home, and the home, all due to fraud. And 2 years later, they haven't gotten anybody to help them while somebody else is living in the property. This is not one-off. If I'm sitting there and 2/3 of the people at the table have had this happen, there's a problem. There's a problem deep within corruption, and California doesn't care. They sincerely want you to own nothing and be happy. Or not, they really don't care. But they don't want you to own anything. And if you think that you're going to own it anyways because of the amount of equity or longevity or just intelligence wrapped around your property, think again. They're going to figure out a way to take it and not give it back. So this isn't even theoretical. And we can't necessarily blame this specifically on politics. This is personal. These are policies that have been put into place often by unelected individuals who look the other way and don't allow the DA to get involved, the sheriff to get involved. They say it's civil. You go to criminal, nobody at the level of the FBI or a higher court will take the case while somebody else is living in your home. This is a lifetime of work, and the system doesn't respond in the way that any of us would expect. So California remains one of the most powerful and influential places in the world. This hasn't changed, but the conditions that made it the destination, default destination for builders are evolving, and people are responding accordingly. But is it really the people that we want in an innovative, intellectual society who are go-getters and capitalists? Well, some are staying, some are leaving, and many are just surviving. Because when the environment changes, behavior follows. And this brings us to the next part of the story. Who is shaping the systems and the decisions? Check out the next video on who is Eric Swalwell. Have a great day.